We got you. I just want you to know. We have your back.
Show up on the city council fails, like, YouTube video, right?
What they'll see is, they'll see us in front of push Krista first.
Good afternoon. We're here for Public Works meetings, 12:30, Tuesday, August 29th. And we're going to start this meeting off with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Roberts.
Here.
Pettigrew.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Ham.
Here.
Roseland.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Roseland, second by Ham. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. General public comment is next, and I don't have any speaker forms. So we're going to go ahead and close general public comment. Next up is consent items 1 through 10. There's a public comment period, no speakers there. Item 1 is a minute approval. So Mr. Tech, would you like to talk about items 2 through 9?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would certainly love to speak to items 2 through 9. Item number 2 is a final change order for the Anamosa Street storm sewer repair project with an increase of about $28,000. That included some additional pavement that was replaced as part of the project. Item number 3 is change order number 4 for the parking structure, an increase of about $13,000 there. The change is necessitated by some additional steel required for the stairwell rehab that's currently ongoing, as well as some additional conduit for additional security cameras. Item number 4 is a final change order for a pavement rehab project we had in the Red Rock Canyon Road Idlewild Court area. Once again, some additional pavement was replaced, so this is a value added change order to the tune of about $15,000. Item number 5 is an amendment for a street trunk sewer project down in the southeast area. As you may recall, we did not receive any bids on that project, so we need to rebid the project and make some changes to the project. So that's what this professional service amendment is about. Item number 6 is a infill agreement. This is located up off of Country Road, just to the east of Haynes Avenue. This is to install approximately 60 feet of sanitary sewer as well as a manhole. This is a fairly typical thing where people need to expand our infrastructure. We do these infill agreements so that the city knows that the quality of the work will be correct, and then we'll be able to accept it as public infrastructure when they're finished. Item number 7 is an easement agreement out at our solid waste facility. Black Hills Energy needs to put additional or construct a new power line into our MRF, or material recovery facility. So an easement is required for that. Item number 8 is an annual revision to our rapid transit system public transportation agency safety plan. The federal, or FTA, Federal Transit Authority, or Administration rather, required about 3 years ago that we adopt a safety plan compliant with federal regulations. As part of that requirement, we have to update it annually. The only update in it this year is, I believe, to require additional training to our drivers about infectious disease. So that's a very slight change to the plan. And then finally, item number 9 is a sidewalk variance. It's in an industrial area along Plant Drive. There's an existing structure there. They are adding another, I believe it's a storage structure to the property. There are no sidewalks along this stretch of street, therefore staff has recommended approving the variance to install sidewalk. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tech. Do any of my colleagues have any questions on items 2 through 9? Motion to approve by Roberts, second by Pettigrew. All in favor? Aye. 2 through 9 are passed. Item number 10, Mr. Beegler, did you want to talk about that item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, item number 10 is we're seeking authorization to advertise for bids for the New Parks greenhouse project. This would be for all of the site work that's necessary before we can place the greenhouse on the site. This is a greenhouse that will be roughly 40 feet by 120 feet in size, and this work under this bid would be for the extension of utilities to this site, as well as perimeter foundation, concrete flooring, and that sort of preparation for the site.
Thank you, Mr. Beegler. Mr. Pettigrew, you're in the queue.
Mr. Beegler, if I could ask you a couple questions, please. Has any thought, I'm always looking at ways to maybe work jointly with business or reduce costs. Has there ever been any thought with, if the large greenhouses in town, we have Jolly Lane, we have Plant Smith, that we could partner with them instead of building a new facility? Would they have space capacity in their greenhouses? They have the building, they have the manpower to provide the space, the manpower to grow all of our plants versus the city doing its own thing?
We have looked at that in the past. It's been a while, and one of the reasons why we built the greenhouse and have been operating it for all these years is because we can provide a cheaper end product. We can grow from seed. We can grow from small plugs and cuttings. So we feel that in the quantity that we require, which is in the neighborhood of 40,000 plants a year, that the most economical way to do that for the city is to grow them ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Beegler. Seeing no one else in queue, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Roberts, second by Pettigrew. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. That ends consent items. Now, non-consent item 11, GCC and Rapid City Solid Waste Division Alternative Fuel Investigation Presentation. Mr. Tech, Ms. Hawsey, are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm waiting for the slides. There we go. Thank you, council members, for allowing us to come in front of you today and listening to what we're going to talk about, which is alternative fuels. We're also going to talk about something I'm going to pass around, which is called clinkers. So we'll have some interesting items to look at. I also want to do a quick introduction to some team members that we have here. We have Luke Roddig from Barnes and McDonald. Burns and McDonald, excuse me. You may remember Luke from our solid waste master plan, who was in front of you. We also have Mark Truesdale from GCC. Stacy Titus is our Assistant Public Works Director. And we have Jeff Barber, who is our solid waste superintendent. And like you said, I'm Kristen Hasse. I'm also Assistant Public Works Director. The purpose of the presentation today is to detail our work so far in exploring alternative fuels, like I said. This is in regards to our solid waste division. So we were talking about our municipal solid waste that currently is being disposed of primarily in the landfill, and we will go into more detail. We also want to introduce our partnership with GCC, as this is truly a joint effort between them and the city. Our goal for this program was to come up with a pathway to minimize or divert, and you will hear diversion many times through this presentation, to divert the amount of material being landfilled. The other goal is to do this while, of course, being fiscally responsible. That is critical, and again, we will talk about that in our presentation. Some background information. GCC and the city have entered into an NDA recently. You may remember that coming before you. But we have been working for many, many years on this project, trying to identify the technology and the operational needs in order to facilitate this process. We are now ready to bring forward this information through our research and our partnership, and we'd like to present that information to you today. So I will turn that over to Mark Truesdale from GCC.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Again, thank you for allowing us to bring this in front of you today. Appreciate that. My name is Mark Truesdale. I work with GCC Cement. I am their U.S. Division Alternative Fuels and Energy Manager. And we're bringing together the presentation here today to kind of elaborate on the project that we've been looking at. How do we divert materials from landfill and continue to use them, in this case, as an alternative fuel? I'm going to go ahead and we'll get started. I'm going to run through the presentation because I know we don't have a tremendous amount of time. So we'll talk a little bit about who is GCC, what are these different divisions, talk a little bit about the cement manufacturing process so we kind of understand exactly what it is we're talking about, and then a little deeper dive into the actual landfill diversion project and how we're going to do that, and what we've done to date, and what are our next steps going to be. GCC Dakota, our local cement plant here, GCC purchased that facility back in 2001. We make a variety of different types of cement, pushing pretty close to 4,000 tons of product out of the facility on a daily basis. We're currently employing over 110 full-time employees with benefits at our facility here in town. We are the only facility in the state to have received our Energy Star certification, which is super important to GCC. In addition to the existing employees, we're looking at employing at least an additional 4 to 8 employees on our side on the processing. GCC owns 5 cement plants in the United States and an additional 3 in Mexico. And for all those plants, we have a separate division called Colorado Energy Recyclers. And we are the alternate fuel supplier to our parent company, GCC. We were founded in 2015 when CER purchased a tire monofill full of tires. That was about 8 years ago. We've since emptied that and are going through closure of that facility, the only one in the entire United States. We are responsible for their projects. We have current projects throughout Mexico, as well as the United States. And as far as me personally, I've been in the recycling industry for over 30 years, and 15 of those years have been doing nothing but putting together these types of projects. I want to just touch base briefly on the 2 notes there right at the bottom. So if I use these words, we kind of understand what they mean. When I talk about processing materials, I'm talking about making it amenable to feed it into the cement plant. Size reduction, taking away contamination, et cetera, in order to produce a specification fuel. If you hear me use the word co-processing, that's the consumption side of the equation at the cement plant, where they're going to effectively consume the energy value of the material. And anytime you combust things, you have a residual left over. In this case, you'll have an ash component. That ash component is actually calculated by our engineers as a raw ingredient, as part of our finished product, which Kristen already alluded to, we call clinker. Don't ask me why they call it clinker. All right, so we can jump to the next slide. Oh, I can jump to the next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit about what GCC does. This is our cement plant here in Rapid City, all right? It's a little busy diagram, but it's well worth taking the time to go through so we kind of understand this. We have aggregate companies that'll go out and mine all these raw materials for us, and you can see the basic 4 raw materials that we have: limestone, silica, iron, alumina, and these all come out of the ground as an ore. We'll take those, and if we want to follow the green, kind of lime green line from the top left where we're talking about quarrying limestone, we'll take all these different raw materials, we begin grinding and crushing them. We'll segregate them into various bins so that we can blend them together in the percentages that we need. And we'll take all these rock, basically, we'll pulverize it into a talcum powder-like consistency. And then this talcum powder is then delivered to what we call the preheater, precalciner. You can see that in the diagram there with the little red and yellow. Those materials are introduced into the preheater, precalciner. They're doing just that. They're preheating the materials. We're going to bring it from ambient temperature at the top of that diagram to about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit towards the bottom of the preheater, precalciner. These materials are slowly being heated as they move towards the rotating cement kiln itself. As they're introduced into the kiln, the slight angle of the kiln and tumbling and rolling action of the kiln slowly moves these materials down towards the main burner. You can see on the left-hand side of the kiln diagram there. As that approaches that main burner, we have heated this material. We've heated the rock to the point where it melts. And in essence, a cement plant melts rock. That's what we do. As the heat is the catalyst that is used to allow these materials to chemically recombine. As they tumble out of the end of the kiln, that tumbling action makes them look round. If you want to pass around the clinker, that is what actually comes out of a cement kiln, and we make clinker. So the big component of what we're doing here, if you follow the City of Rapid City materials, these are going to be the fuels that we use. We're going to derive these fuels from the municipal solid waste stream. We're going to derive them from construction and demolition byproducts, non-recyclable materials, things that don't have viable recycling outlets. We already have the yard waste program where we're making an alternate fuel from the yard waste program. This component we're presenting is a huge expansion of that. We want to make more fuel and better fuel. As we produce that clinker goes into our storage silos. We will again take those little round balls and pulverize them back to like a talcum powder consistency in those cement mills. They'll mix in other admixtures like gypsum. At the end, we're going to put it in a bag, and you and I are going to pick that up at Home Depot, and we call that Portland cement, right? The key component, again, the materials going in go in as a fuel. The materials coming out are sold as a finished product. There is no waste that is generated from this process. All of the materials, 100%, are consumed as a fuel, or the residual ash components are combined in our finished product. We only have one outlet of the kiln, and that is for our finished products. So there is no additional disposal that comes from this. And our little fun fact down there, just so we can all differentiate, cement is to concrete what flour is to a cake, right? We are the binding agent that holds our aggregates and sand together to produce our concrete. So that's a very generic description of our cement manufacturing process. And of the alternate fuels, you can see a few different points where they'll go into the kiln, but the net result is all the same. Those materials, the MSW, construction and demolition, non-recyclables, yard waste, and tires, etc., those materials are consumed at 100%, and with any ash residuals going right back into our finished products and sold. So how do we do this? How do we take the materials that you're generating locally here and turn that into a usable specification fuel? So we've been working long and hard on this project. Some of the background Kristen already alluded to. We have been doing this. We started out with your yard waste program and producing a biomass type fuel just from the various wood waste. We've diverted successfully over 5,000 tons just over the last 12 months of material, with the expectation, like I said, to make more fuel with better quality. In order to do that, we needed to kind of come up with that whole scope of work and allow both our teams to work together. So we're preparing what we refer to as an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, that basically is a document that lays out what each party is going to do. And I'll turn this over to Luke from this consulting group to be able to kind of address some of those things as well. Oh, good timing.
Good afternoon, Luke Rodig with Burns & McDonnell. As Kristen mentioned, I've been working with the city's solid waste division and the public works division for the better part of 3 years in development of the city's solid waste master plan. And so this project or program that Mark is talking through the details on really aligns with the city's solid waste management plan goals. And those goals are specifically to increase diversion from the landfill, and as a result of that diversion, that prolongs landfill life. So the more tonnage and waste that goes away from landfill through this use of alternate fuels, the longer the life of the landfill will be, and less expansion needed in the future. Another benefit of this program is ensuring effective management of challenging materials and markets. So we're talking about the bulky waste items that Jeff and the solid waste operations crew has to grind and landfill and pack to the best of their ability, but that take up a lot of space. Those are exactly the materials that GCC is wanting to use as this fuel. So we're diverting those bulky items away from landfilling. We're also looking at other challenging materials. So low-grade plastics that don't have recycling markets, those are wanted materials from GCC's standpoint. So this would be an outlet for those types of materials. So I'll move forward here. Mark mentioned the scope of work and where we're at to date. They've done some yard waste program and using that for alternate fuel. What we're doing currently is we're at the beginning stages of evaluating the other materials, the municipal solid waste, the construction and demolition debris, the plastics, how those components will be pulled out of the waste stream at the city's solid waste facility and diverted to CER, Colorado Energy Recyclers, or GCC for processing this. And so overall, the goal is divert materials landfilled by creating a cleaner burning fuel from high heat value materials segregated from the routine waste and recyclables collection. And to achieve this, we will jointly work together to evaluate program details and the financials of what that program means, not only from GCC's end, but also from the city's solid waste division. Looking at operational adjustments, any sort of improvements to traffic flow and safety on site at the solid waste facility. And we'll be going through that evaluation here over the next several months. After the completion of the evaluation, we'll be coming back to council, essentially providing a briefing of the outcomes and recommendations to you all. And once that next step of council engagement happens, we would then go into public outreach and media messaging, really laying out a communication plan, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide. to communicate this to the public. So, as noted, this would be a next phase after the evaluation and council buy-in. Stakeholders, residents, businesses may have some questions regarding this program. What's it going to cost them? What are the benefits? Any environmental impacts? So as part of this evaluation, we're really looking to answer those questions ahead of time and have detailed responses ready to go. And so what that would mean is developing simple fact sheets that really lay out this information in a way that's easy to understand. We'd have a unified message going out to the public. So on the left side of the screen there, those are just potential communication tools that could be used. I mentioned the fact sheets. It'd be media postings. There could be workshops being held, public open house meetings, as well as coming back to the council for council briefings. And the City Public Works Department has implemented all of those communication tools, and there's others too. And so the goal would be to really develop a plan that best suits presenting this information to the public. So turn it back over.
All right. Thanks, Luke. So we want to talk a little bit about, we've heard about what we've done. What do we have to do next? Really the next step is the detail for that scope of work, and that is in the form of the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, to be able to present that to council for their consideration. On the GCC side, we have a lot of work to do evaluating the different materials that are going to be processed into an alternate fuel. And a lot of that involves interaction between the South Dakota Department of Natural Resources, or Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources, as well as US EPA. We have to have their approvals before we can use any of these materials. And then the big one for GCC here, make sure that we have a correct determination of our capital and the split of the involvement of the parties. So those are really kind of the key bullet points of what GCC is going to be focused on the next steps. The city has some other bullet points. Go ahead, I'll let Luke take over here.
Yeah, from the city's end, the important parts to still work through are determining the logistics, again, how that material is diverted through the solid waste facility, looking at operational adjustments, looking at landfill airspace life savings, and calculating what that would look like on a long-term basis, and how do you quantify the benefit of that as part of our evaluation, and then looking at the costs. And so plugging in all of the benefits as well as landfill disposal savings with the potential costs of equipment or operational needs from the city's solid waste department, and plugging that into our cost of service model to project what any impacts would be on rates. So that's part of our evaluation process that we'll be working through. And then we'll turn it back to Kristen to wrap up here.
Thank you. As you can imagine, this is a very large program and project. It's going to encompass several phases. So the next one on that list is to provide council briefing with proposed recommendations. So that is something that we would like to do, is to continue these types of briefings to you to see where we are so that we can show you where we are in this process. Also part of the program planning phase is identifying our risks that become known and develop mitigation plan for those risks. So if you think of your SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, thank you, forgot my own term there for a minute. But that's very important. To make this successful, we need to go through that risk management process. And the next, again, as we've talked many times, is our public outreach and our messaging. That is very critical. It is going to take more than just us in this room. It's going to take all the residents of the city, as well as council and the mayor, to support this process. So that outreach is very critical. And again, the last part of that is the implementation phase. That is going to answer how are we going to do this? How are we going to start this process and build on what we are already doing? That's all we have today. We will open it up for questions and bring the team up.
Thank you for the presentation today. Do any of my colleagues have any questions, comments they'd like to make? Mr. Roseland?
Thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate what's happening with the city doing this. You know, we've been wanting, the Sustainability Committee's been really wanting to have a coordinator, hopefully in the near future, get hired to do exactly what you're doing, to help exactly what you are doing. Rapid City is doing it without maybe a lot of knowledge. You're doing it internally and basically saving the environment through recycling and restoring and refunctioning everything, all trash. The end result is nothing other than fuel, which is incredible. And I really feel like you're moving in the right direction. I appreciate it. I can remember years ago, 55 years ago, my high school motto was, take the world as you find it and leave it better. And it's always been in the back of my mind, innate. How I work was how I live. Yeah, and this is one way, and many ways to do this. And I think really with what solid waste is doing and GCC, I really applaud what's happening, and hopefully we can make this move forward for you and have a good result. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roseland. Seeing nobody else in queue, I'd entertain a motion to acknowledge. Motion by Roberts. So, Mr. Tech?
I just wanted to provide a little additional information. This presentation will be given tomorrow at Legal and Finance. We wanted to make sure that the entire council was covered without taking up valuable time here at a council meeting for a presentation to the entire council. So we're trying to be as efficient as we can in this and get the word out to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Tech. That's much appreciated. We have a motion by Roberts, a second by Ham to acknowledge. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We've acknowledged the presentation. Thank you. Motion to adjourn by Roberts, second by Roseland. All in favor? And we're adjourned.